Welcome to Forest County, Pennsylvania and the Forest County Outback channel, where we combine history with the outdoors. Now today we are back in the Yellowhammer area, and we filmed out here before. Episode 2 was Braceville, 5 was Sanford Holbrook's Yellowhammer sawmill, and 10 was the mystery mills of Yellowhammer. And a Yellowhammer, by the way, if you don't know, is a northern flicker. So today we're going to look at the site of the Pettigrew Farm, and then we are going to head down the road and look at a relic of the Pettigrew Farm, and then I want to talk briefly about some of the things that are happening with the channel and what to expect in the near future. So this is Forest County Outback 26, the Pettigrew Farm. Now that's the trail coming up the hill to the farm, which sits on top of this ridge. And there's some foundations over here, which we'll take a look at. And then the main part of the farm was out that way. They had a lot of apple trees. I don't think they did much in the way of crops. This was probably a stock farm. I know they did have oxen, so they were probably contracting to logging operations back in here. This is not good farm country back in this area. So right in here we've got a platform for a building, and there's a series of stone piers through here. Now I was told that this was a schoolhouse, and it's isolated as this is, and it was back at that time. It's hard to believe there were enough children around to support a school. But apparently there were. I've been told that this was not just a farm, that there was a community back in here, and I haven't seen signs of other homesteads or that, but research is ongoing. You never know. But one of the mystery mills that I talked about in episode 10 is about a half mile over that way. And the Otter Creek Logging Railroad came up there. So they had, you know, pretty decent connection to the outside world. And there's a good chance that there were some children in that camp who would have been coming over here to school. Have a lot of apple trees in here. And then over this way over this way is the foundation of another building. Now there's the schoolhouse over there. And then over here are more foundation stones. And there is the outline of a building in here. And you've got a course of stones along here and a few back there. Now, I don't know much about the Pettigrew family, haven't been able to find anything about them. Haven't found any photos of this farm either. There was a Joseph Pettigrew who served in the Civil War, and he was wounded in the Battle of Peebles Farms near Richmond in September of 1864. And I would imagine that he had some connection with this farm. The time frame would have been about right. Talk about 1870s, 1880s. And the farm was occupied up until say the late 1920s or early 30s. And I'll tell you why here a little bit later, why I know that. And then over here was their spring. People must have been really adept back then at moving big stones. You know, today we won't even attempt this without a bobcat or something. Now, the opening is back that way in the spring, but in this area it's kind of indistinct, but it looks like there were probably some other structures in here. So that's looking back towards that second building in the spring over there. And it looks like there may have been a building in this area too. And then there's the site of the schoolhouse. Now we're going to walk out that way, out the ridge, and look at a couple things out there. We're walking out the ridge, and this used to be much more open than it is now. It's really growing in. But over here off to the side, kind of tucked back in the shadows, is this small family plot. Now, I first saw this place in 1975. And this plot looked pretty much like it does today. There were no gravestones in it. And some older people have told me that at one time there was, and that they disappeared in the late 60s, early 70s. Somebody took them. Now, there is one stub of a stone. It looks like the markers were just field stones. Although with this kind of an elaborate fence, I would think maybe some of the markers were, were regular carved stone. And then there's this one laying here loose, and it looks like it had inscriptions on it at one time, but it's impossible to read anything. So how many people were buried in here, we don't know. Wouldn't have been that many. And then, yeah, this huge tree right in the middle of it. By the size of it, I'd say that tree was growing here, before the place was abandoned. And we don't know if the Civil War veteran is buried here or not. I do know a couple who put flags around here on Memorial Day. I see they didn't this year. But they said they don't know if there was any veterans here, but they just will put flags here as just as a matter of course. But apparently they didn't make it out this year, because this is the day after Memorial Day when I'm filming. So this is what the whole ridge used to look like. It was nice and open like this. A lot of apple trees in it. It's a nice place. Now here's something I never spotted before when I've been up here. This pattern right here, like a square space, got a border of ferns around it, and it almost looks like there was a building here. And there's another one over there. It's odd, usually when you see these ferns, it's just, you know, it's just a solid field of them. Huh. Oh, here's something else I've never noticed before. These rose bushes, this clump, I mean, they're in a rectangle. I mean, really well-defined edges here. Every time you go back to a place, you spot something new. Yeah, I mean, it may not show up on a camera here, but there is some kind of outline in the ground here. Huh. Hey, if you grew up in Forest County and are of a certain age, you might recognize that last scene here, because back in the 70s, this spot out here was like party central. Yeah, it was like the party spot of Forest County, or so I've been told. And yeah, you might recognize it, or you know, maybe you don't. Maybe you weren't in any condition to remember anything. Anyhow, the reason I said that this farm was occupied into the late 20s, maybe early 30s, was I had a neighbor who grew up here, and he was born, I think, around 1920, something like that. But he and his brother were out here, I don't know for what, and they lived in Endeavor, and they were headed home from here, and somebody here gave them a burlap sack with some ox shoes in it to take to the blacksmith at Endeavor. And they were walking down the Otter Creek Railroad grade, and they got tired of carrying the damn thing, and they stuffed it in an old stump and forgot about it. Never went back for it. So if you happen to be out along Otter Creek somewhere and you find a lump of rusty metal, that could be a bag of ox shoes. All right, that's about it for the farm. I mean, there's really not a lot to see here. But we're going to take a drive and we're going to look at a remnant of the Pettigrew Farm that is still in existence. Hey, if that last clip triggered any embarrassing memories for anybody, I apologize. Just remember, that was a long time ago, and what happens in Yellowhammer stays in Yellowhammer. Anyhow, we are about 7-8 miles away from Pettigrew Farm right now, and this is the Balltown Road. This used to be the main road from Wig Hill to Balltown up on Tynester Creek. But what we're here to see is this barn. In 1919, one of the barns at the Pettigrew Farm was torn down, and the lumber was hauled out here, and some of it was used to build this barn the next year in 1920. So it's a combination of elements of its salvage lumber from the Pettigrew Farm, and it's some what was new material in 1920. So I think that's just a really cool cool little piece of history. So we're going to go and take a look inside here and check it out. I said this was a combination of different material. As you can see, the uprights here. Remember, this barn was built in 1920. The uprights here are hand-hewn timbers. Now, whether they came from the Pettigrew Farm, I don't know. That's actually quite possible. By 1920s, you probably would have seen sawn timbers. And a lot of the bracing here, that's what you've got. And one of the things to note about this is the timbers aren't not weathered. There's a little bit of notching, but it's minimal. You're not seeing the tendon joints net like you normally would in a timber frame barn. And this foundation is original. It was put here in 1920. And the odd thing about this is it's not secured to the foundation. It's just sitting here, and it's actually pretty lightly built. There's not a lot of bracing in here, but it's survived for 120, or well, not 120, about 100 years, amazingly. But you can see the roof is all modern, as I say, like 1920s sawn lumber. But the uprights and the siding is obviously salvaged from an older barn. That must have been pretty hairy building that up there. No ridge pole. And this was a hay barn. There was never any livestock in it. As you can see, the boards here, a lot of old nail holes in them, and they're actually kind of rough shape. They're very weathered. Take a close look outside. They're really weathered. Now you get an idea of how badly weathered and checked these boards are. I mean, they're pretty. They're actually, by now, they're pretty fragile. But I think that's pretty neat that we have, you know, that they did that, and that we have this piece of the old Pettigrew Farm still in existence. All right, let's talk about the channel a little bit now. I've been putting videos out about every 7 to 10 days, and that's a tough pace to keep up. I'm going to start stretching them out a little further. And for one thing, I don't want to basically flood the market. The other is, in the last couple of weeks, things have just gotten insanely busy here. There's several things going on. My wife and I have talked for several years about building a new house, and every year there seems to be a delay. And I'm actually hopeful that next year we'll be able to do it, but I've got a lot of prep work to get ready for it. And I'm actually thinking of doing a separate channel just on the house construction, because this is it's an unconventional house. It's going to be earth berm and timber frame, so it's going to be really different, and I think it would be interesting to a lot of people. I'm pretty excited about doing it. It's construction, the type of construction I've never done, but I got to get ready for it, and we've got a lot of hoops to jump through for permits and things like that, because this is, like I said, an unconventional type of construction. And so that's going to be taking up some time later in the summer. In the next couple weeks, it's really crazy. On July 4th, I am doing a program at the Forest County Historical Society, and I'm trying to get that wrapped up and finalized. And then I'm also working on a documentary film, and I'm going to submit it to the Archaeonis, I think it is pronounced, film festival. It's about archaeological and cultural heritage films, and this is something totally different than doing a YouTube video. It's definitely a learn as you go thing, and the deadline is coming up pretty quick, June 15th. So I'm starting to feel some panic over that, which is good, because it's helping me focus, which I need to do at this point. So, you know, because of those various things going on, I'm stretching out the time between the videos. Now, I know a couple weeks ago I talked about Facebook page, Patreon, and merchandise. I haven't done anything with those. I haven't had time. So hopefully stretching out the time between videos, even with everything else is going on, hopefully I will get to be able to do something with that. So in the meantime, if you like it, come on, hit that button. Don't be shy. Share, comment, and subscribe. And we'll catch you on the next one a little bit later than usual. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Continues to amaze me that I've been able to live my life in such a beautiful place.